Hello and welcome to my session on company-wide agility with Beyond Budgeting, Open Space and Sociocracy, which is also shortened to Bossa Nova. My name is Jutta Eckstein, and you might know me from several books that I wrote on different areas in Agile. However, today I want to really focus on my latest work together with John Buck, which is the Bossa Nova book. The reason is that, well, what we see, what is required today is really companies that are agile. And why is that? It's because we are living currently in a VUCA time. And well, I bet you have heard this before because it's not really something new. However, now the pandemic really has showed us that VUCA is present everywhere, and especially for companies. So the world just is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I want to give you an example. By the end of 2019, people have put a lot of time into fixing their budget for the year to come, for 2020. But at latest, in March 2020, they figured that all this time was wasted, because things have changed like crazy due to the pandemic. Now, the thing is, that's also true in other cases, although the pandemic is maybe the most extreme that we all have gone through, but things are changing all the time, and we cannot forecast in the way and make plans in the way we have done this in the past. So what's really required for companies is that they are agile in themselves. And agile here doesn't mean that they will implement Scrum all over the place. It means that they are agile in the literal sense, meaning that they are fast, flexible, responsive, nimble, all of that. And on top, that they keep learning and know how to deal with that situation. So now I would like first to take a look into what does it mean for a company to be a learning organization. And learning organization, actually this has been defined way back when in the 90s. It was Peter Senge mainly talking about this. And he said, learning organizations are organizations that encourage adaptive and generative learning, encourage their employees to think outside the box and to work in conjunction with other employees to find the best answer to any problem. So now, knowing what a learning organization is, we also should look into what is an agile organization. An agile organization is actually starting with, it's more than what we know about agile. So if you think about it, it's thinking beyond agile. And the beyond is really looking at the company from various angles, starting with, like at the top, we have here beyond budgeting, which means, well, we cannot fix a budget a year in advance. If we do so, we just prevent us to be agile. Then open space is another thing which focuses mainly on what you just saw from Peter Senge saying, encourage employees to think outside the box and that they work together to find best answers to any problem. So open space allows exactly that as a strategy for a company where you invite everyone to really look at their passion and use that passion to be innovative for the company. So it's not coming up with a job description, putting people in this little box, and so they fulfill only what that job description tells them to do. No, they can just think outside that box. Now, looking at sociocracy, the next element here is really looking into how are decisions made and how are we dealing with power in an organization. Just think of it. If we are making all decisions in a centralized way, they are way too slow for being an agile organization. And the same is true if we have a pure hierarchy that's not adding the feedback from bottom to top. We are also not able to be responsive. So Sociocracy provides answers for decentralizing the power and for coming up with decisions fast and collaboratively. And then there's Agile. Actually, I think you know all about it. However, it focuses mainly on inspecting and adapting. Now, further on, what does this really mean now? If you're an Agile organization and want to be one, I brought an example to you. So one example, one of my favorite ones, is how you want to deal with expenses. The reason is that companies typically have a really huge amount of rules and regulations in place that people have to adhere to in order to get reimbursed for the expenses they made. That means, well, you look in advance already. Where do you spend your money? How do you do it? Is it adhering to those guidelines or not? And basically the feeling that gives you those rules and regulations is that, well, the company trusts you to run this €1 million project, but the company doesn't trust you to really be responsible in terms of the expenses you have to make in order to get your job done. And that's a really big mismatch. It shows the mistrust companies often have in their employees. And I want to give you an example what else you can do. And this example is from a company called IT Agile. It's a German company. And they will have Agile already in their name. And therefore, you can imagine that people said, well, the way we deal with expenses doesn't sound very Agile to us. Maybe we have to come up with something different. And so they came collaboratively up with something different. And what they came up with was only 3 principles people had to adhere to for getting reimbursed. And the first principle is, well, it should be kind of obvious that whatever you spend your money on, it has to be legal. Well, the next principle is the money you spend, you should spend it in an economically sensible way. And nobody defined what it means. And the third principle is, well, if you're spending money because you need something for getting your job done, please take care of yourself. And again, nobody really said what this means. And I want to give you one example that I heard of from the CEO when I asked him, like half a year after they came up with those principles, how's it going? And no, this is a pre-pandemic example. And what he told me, Henning, his name, was that they figured out that about 1/3 of the people traveling are traveling first class on a train, 2/3 are traveling second class. And there are not any more classes in Germany on German trains. But they then also figured is that the 1/3 that travels first class are consultants only. So it's not even the CEO or any top managers, it's the consultants. And everyone in the company was quite happy with that because they said, well, taking care for yourself means something different if you're on the road all the time than if you are only traveling every once in a while. So the big learning for them was treating everyone the same by having the same rules and guidelines in place, what you typically have with reimbursing expenses, doesn't mean to treat everyone equal, which I think is a huge learning. By the way, there are also other companies who came up with different ideas. For example, there's Smiles, a Norwegian company, and they just came up with one principle, which is for all your expenses, please put it on the intranet, say how much money you spend on what. And there might be a discussion and you might have to argue why you thought you really put so much money into this thing and not saving it for something else. So there are different possibilities how you can do that. Now, how did companies come up with something like that? Basically, they were guided by values, and the 4 values that guide companies in being agile and being able to learn are transparency, self-organization, continuous learning, and constant customer focus. All of those 4 values are defined by those 4 different streams that you have seen earlier, like beyond budgeting, open space, sociocracy, and agile. Looking into those, it means, for example, transparency says create transparency for all involved in 2 directions by providing information and lowering the barriers to those seeking information. So it's not making everything transparent, but it is being able to get the information you need in order to get your job done. Self-organization is defined, use accountable cross-functional teams that select themselves and follow their passion with responsibility. Well, the main driver here is open space, where you follow your passion, actually. Then continuous learning is defined as always learning, contribute to others' learning, get feedback and adapt. So it's not about only what you learn, but also how you help others to learn. And this is a really strong power here. Then we have constant customer focus. That means focus wide on every aspect of the company, product and process, structure and strategy, and individual contributions and people. So really thinking holistically about the company and how the company can serve the customer. Now, how can you start doing something like this, or how do agile companies implement this? And that's actually pretty easy. They start reflecting on their situation. What is it that bothers us? For example, it bothers us that the expenses are ruled and guided the way they are, but it can be anything else. It doesn't really matter. Then they design a probe, and the probe, bear with me for now, is a kind of an experiment. It is a little bit more than an experiment. We will see this in a minute. Then you try that experiment, and then you reflect again on your situation in order to learn if that experiment really helped you for that situation. And then please don't forget to also publish to your peers, because, for example, if IT Agile and also the Norwegian company Miles wouldn't have published about their experiences, I wouldn't have been able to tell you about what other people do in terms of expenses. So now let's look into what it means to design a probe. And I brought an example probe that speaks exactly to that example, which is called, Is Trust Cheaper? So a probe consists of a title, like Is Trust Cheaper, or a name, a background, which is actually the outcome of your reflection on the situation. For example, that people think, well, the way we are dealing with expenses assumes that we can't be trusted. Then it also consists also about of a hypothesis. So, for example, that you think, well, maybe those procedures actually cost more than they save. Maybe it's not so good to have all those procedures here. And then you come up with an experiment, and the experiment can be the one that I just explained from IT Agile, or the one from Miles, where you only have one principle, or maybe you come up with something completely different. However, the experiment always has a pre and post measurement in order to be able to validate both your reflection and your hypothesis after you have run the experiment and you see if it has become true or not. Most often we would recommend to try a probe for a limited time frame, and then you revisit before you roll it out to like a broader part of the company. So this is what a learning organization is about. And to bring this home, again, I want to quote Peter Senge here, who says, a learning organization is a group of people who are continually enhancing their capabilities to create what they want to create. Isn't that a cool thing? Isn't that what Agile really is about? It is about the purpose that we are having, and that we want to support our clients, our customer, to really be the best they can. And with that, I want to end, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion we will be having right now. However, you can also check out our website, the agilebossanova.org, where you will find other probes, so not only the ones that I just brought to you, but also other ones. And you can use them, learn more about them, and of course you can learn more about Bossa Nova by reading our book, which is also available in different languages. Just brand new is Spanish, but we also have traditional Chinese, and we have German, and French is starting as well. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.